Still having trouble understanding native speakers when they speak super fast? Don't worry, you're definitely not alone. In today's video, I'll be breaking down line by line a Spanish dialogue read by a great friend of mine. I recommend you first listen to the audio without looking at the subtitles, then re-listen to it whilst watching the subtitles, proceed onto the breakdown, then finally come back and listen to it one more time. This method works wonders if you are consistent. It's all about progressively exposing yourself to faster and faster Spanish. With that being said, let's get on to the video.
Hola Laura, ¿cómo te sientes hoy? Hola Marcos, estoy un poco cansada y un poco estresada por el trabajo. Oh, lo siento. ¿Quieres hablar sobre eso? Sí, sí, gracias. Tengo muchas tareas y algunas reuniones importantes. Me siento abrumada. Entiendo. A veces es normal sentirse así. ¿Hay algo que te haga sentir mejor? Me gusta escuchar música tranquila o dar un paseo por el parque. Eso ayuda a relajarme. Buena idea. A mí, cuando estoy preocupado, me gusta escribir mis pensamientos y organizar mis tareas. Ah, qué interesante. También me siento feliz cuando paso tiempo con mis amigos o mi familia. Sí, compartir momentos con seres queridos siempre mejora el ánimo. Exactamente. Y cuando logro terminar todo lo que tengo pendiente, siento mucha satisfacción y alivio. Me alegro. Reconocer nuestros sentimientos y encontrar formas de manejarlos es muy importante.
Let's dive straight into the text. Now, the dialogue of this one will be a bit different from the previous two we've done on the channel. However, the benefits are still there and it's still the best way to master your Spanish listening. So let's dive into the first sentence. Hola Laura, ¿cómo te sientes hoy? Hola Laura, ¿cómo te sientes hoy? Super basic, generic question, all right? Hola Laura, person one is asking, hello Laura, how do you feel, or how are you feeling, I should say, how are you feeling today? Now, make sure we're adding this accent above the O. A lot of people in daily speech, even natives, get sloppy and they miss out this accent above the O. That would mean something completely different and wouldn't actually match the context. However, in daily speech, between teenagers, between youths, between even adults, all right, people are just sloppy and that's the way they write. So, como, we need this accent for it to mean how somebody is feeling. It's a question word. So, como, que, cuando, cuánto, por qué, they all carry accents and they all have the variation of it without the accent, which are used in different contexts. So it's very important. We need to make sure we are speaking correctly, right? So, como te sientes, followed by the reflexive of sentirse. Now, later on, we're going to go over sentir and the differences. Just quickly, sentirse is basically used when we're asking the certain way of somebody, okay? So this is going to be the one 9 times out of 10 that you're going to use because you're asking the certain way someone is, and it's followed by an adjective, all right? So here we're asking how somebody is in this moment, all right? The certain way that they are. You can respond, me siento feliz, all right? Followed by the adjectives, me siento cansado, abrumado, right? Preocupado. The adjectives always follow sentirse, remember that. So, how are you feeling today, hoy, today? Super simple. Sentence 2. The response from person 2. Hola Marcos, right? Hola Marcos. Hello Marcus. Estoy un poco cansada. Now this is a giveaway. This tells us that person 2 is a female because the adjective ends in a here. If this was a male, it would be estoy un poco cansado. Estoy un poco cansado. So I am. So we have the verb estar here, meaning to be. In Spanish, there are 2 to be's, unfortunately, used in various situations. This one, just a really quick topic. I'll have to do a video in the future discussing the differences. But we use estar when we're talking about this temporary state that we're feeling in, or that we're in, all right? So I'm currently feeling cansada. However, in the next few minutes, it could even be by tomorrow, I'll be completely different, which is why we're using estar here. And it's in the first person, so estoy. Estoy un poco cansada. So I'm a little, literally, a little, un poco cansada. Y, right? Y, a connector here, we're linking one part up with another part. Y un poco estresada, and a little stressed, okay? Estresada. Again, this adjective needs to agree with the person who's speaking. If it's a female, estresada. If it's a male, estresado, right? And also groups. If it's us, estamos estresados, right? So, and a little stressed. Now here, very little cool, I guess, construct here. So, por el trabajo. Estoy un poco cansado y un poco estresado por el trabajo, all right? Now, por, and I'll write this down for you guys. Make sure you've got a pen or something, you're writing these down. So, por plus a noun, okay? So we have el trabajo. Well, it's usually going to be por plus the article, an article being a or the, so un, el, and so on. So por plus the article plus the noun is going to hold the meaning of because of the noun, okay? So a quick example I could give instead of this one. No pudimos salir, so we weren't able to leave, por la lluvia, por la lluvia. We weren't able to leave because of the rain. So that's how we use por in this situation. So she's saying that she is a little tired and a little stressed because of the work, right? Because of work. That's what we're saying there. But in Spanish, when you want to be specific, you use the articles. They're used a lot more in Spanish than in English. This is the response from the person number one. Oh, lo siento, right? Super generic, common phrase saying, oh, sorry to hear about that. That's what they're saying. Lo siento, sorry, okay? Then this person asks the question, ¿Quieres hablar sobre eso? Right? Do you want? This is from the verb querer. Now it's an irregular one, irregular with this little I gets added in with all the forms except for the nosotros and the vosotros. So they're the two forms that don't get changed. But it's quiero, quieres, quiere, queremos, queréis, quieren. All right? So, ¿quieres hablar? So we're just asking here, and in Spanish, if you didn't already know, we don't need the word do. Do doesn't exist. You simply state the action verb, and then that corresponds over to the question. You can also, raise your tonation as well. So, ¿quieres hablar sobre eso? Right? Instead of saying, ¿quieres hablar sobre eso? Right? That would be like, you want to speak about that. Not really a question, but you need to raise that intonation. So, ¿quieres hablar? So we have to want. So, do you want to speak? Hablar, to speak about that. So, very literal translation there. Do you want to speak about that? It's a question. The next person, the person two, responds, sí, sí, gracias. So this is a very good demonstration from my great friend who recorded this. Very natural way to respond. Instead of just saying, sí, gracias, you can get a bit fluent with it. Sí, sí, gracias, and so on. So very cool little tips here. Sí, sí, gracias. So basically clarifying that yes, the person definitely wants to speak about this. Here, the next sentence. Tengo muchas tareas y algunas reuniones, right? Reuniones importantes. Tengo muchas tareas y algunas reuniones importantes. So we have the verb tener, to have. This is in the first person. Now, tener is also an irregular verb. And in my school program, I mention all the time about how the irregulars, yes, they exist, they're annoying, but because they're so frequent, it's almost a good thing because we're using them more often than the regular ones. Therefore, we master them quicker. So, tengo muchas tareas. Here we go. I have, okay, muchas. This needs to agree with the noun in both gender and quantity. So, muchas tareas. So we know that the noun here is homework, all right, or works, okay? So homeworks, and we're saying a lot of homework, all right? But it needs to agree with this. If this was tarea, it would be tengo mucha tarea. But we're saying we have a lot of, multiple homeworks. And algunas reuniones importantes, okay? So, and some important meetings. So, reunión means meeting, and this here is some. This, again, needs to agree with the noun. So here we have a lot of agreeing. We have the algunas and also importantes. Now, importantes doesn't have a gender, doesn't change. It's always importante, but what we do need to make sure is that it agrees with the quantity. And here we have meetings, and we know that in Spanish, the adjective comes after the noun. So we could, if we, for a second, ignore algunas, and we say, tengo muchas tareas y reuniones importantes, right? So this is a lot more simpler. So just meetings, important. All right, that's almost a literal translation. So what we're saying there is important meetings. Why is this importantes? Because we have multiple meetings, right? And then here, if we go back, algunas means that we're being more specific. We have some important meetings. That's that one there. Next one, me siento abrumada. So me siento abrumada. Me siento abrumada, again, sentirse. We discussed that on line 1. Sentirse being the way that you're feeling, that certain way you're feeling. It's followed by the adjectives. Me siento abrumada. So this person feels overwhelmed. Awesome verb there, abrumarse, right? So abrumada. Me siento abrumada. And this is simply just the first person of the reflexive of sentirse. So me siento abrumada. Awesome sentence there. Entiendo, entiendo. Again, awesome response here. Entiendo, entiendo. You're just repeating them, very much so, like we do in English. Entiendo, entiendo. A veces es normal sentirse así. A veces es normal sentirse así. So a veces, sometimes, awesome construct there. A veces, right? Locución, that's what it's called in Spanish. Locución, a group of words that mean something, one word usually in English. So sometimes, es normal, so this is from the verb ser, right? Es, third person. It's, so usually when we want to say it is, right? In the present tense, we're going to use es. A veces es normal, so sometimes it's normal. And then sentirse again, to feel this certain way. Why are we using sentirse? Because we're talking about this person being abrumada, right? So it needs to be sentirse again and not sentir. Right? We're talking about how this person is feeling, this way that this person is feeling. So sometimes it's normal to feel, and then así, like this, like that. An awesome little word in Spanish. In English, we have to say like this, like that. In Spanish, just así. It's used a lot as well, with a lot of colloquial expressions. So sometimes it's normal to feel like that, or like that, or like this. Right? Completely normal. So that's this person here, almost agreeing or giving a good reason as to why she might feel like that, to maybe not make her feel as stressed and so on. Next sentence, we have the subjunctive triggered. Hay algo que te haga sentir mejor. So the first part of the sentence here, hay algo que. So this right here, there is, there are. Hay una mesa, hay una botella, hay una silla, so on and so forth. Now in English, we need to reverse that. So when we're saying there is something, we're stating that there is something, it's a fact. We say there is, there are. If we're asking a question, are there, is there? We need to reverse the order of those two words. In Spanish, however, it stays the same. It stays exactly the same. So we just say hay. And this is just saying, in question form, is there something? Okay, something that. So is there, something that, right? And now we have the subjunctive triggered. So if you want to write down a subjunctive trigger, for whatever reason, you can write hay algo que, right? And what we're asking is there something that makes you feel better? Is there something, it's uncertain. I don't even know if this exists. You might not even know if this exists. But is there something that it has a possibility of making you feel better? Now, the best way to master the subjunctive is through learning the triggers. It's almost impossible, especially through the first couple of years of learning Spanish, to try and understand the feeling of using the subjunctive. It doesn't exist for us. It's very hard to get to that level. It takes years and years of practice and immersion in the language. So, trigger phrases are what are going to be key. So, hay algo que te haga sentir mejor. Is there something that might, right, make? So, hacer, this is just a subjunctive of hacer, right? So you'd probably be more used to seeing que te hace sentir mejor, right? And I'll write that one down. So this is just that same verb, hacer, all right? But this is just the subjunctive form it takes when something's, more either hypothetical, unknown, there's certainty, there's doubt. It's that in that void. So hay algo que te haga sentir mejor. Is there something that makes you feel better? So all the words are there, but the languages are different, obviously, in the forms that each sentence takes. So that's what that's saying there. Is there something that might make you feel better? That's an awesome sentence. Now, on to the next one. This person responds, me gusta escuchar música tranquila o dar un paseo por el parque, right? So I like, whenever you're saying you like, so I'll give a quick example in English. I like walking, I like swimming, I like to write, okay? So a lot of the time whenever we're saying I like to do an action, you like to do something, we're usually going to use in English the ing form. However, in Spanish, you need to think of it like you're saying to write, to swim, to whatever, because we don't use the gerund in Spanish. It's me gusta escuchar, and it's always going to be singular. So there's an old video on my channel somewhere of me going over gustar and how it works, and it's usually used with gusta or gustan. Now, gustan is when there are multiple things, you know. Me gustan las botellas. Me gustan let's think, los libros, for example. But whenever we're saying a verb, doesn't matter how many verbs there are. So I could say, me gusta escuchar, nadar, caminar. Doesn't matter how many verbs there are, it's always going to be me gusta, all right? Me gusta escuchar, nadar, caminar, whatever, cantar. Okay, so what we're saying here is, this thing, escuchar música tranquila, right, is pleasing to me. So in Spanish, the word order is completely reversed, and the verb to like doesn't actually exist in Spanish. It's to be pleasing. This thing is pleasing to me. So that's what we're saying, but obviously in English we would say I like to listen to music, to tranquil music, right? To calm, relaxing music. That's what we're saying. So me gusta escuchar música tranquila, right? And again, tranquila coming after the noun because it's the adjective. Or, right? Or, dar un paseo por el parque. Okay? So we can see here another use of por. Now, dar un paseo, this just means to take a stroll, to take a walk. Very colloquial way, instead of saying, you know, caminar por wherever. So dar un paseo, right? To stroll, to walk around. So to walk around, to stroll, por el parque. And then por in this situation is saying around, right? I could say a few examples, dar un paseo por el mar, right? To walk by, okay? To walk by the sea, the beach area. But in this case, it was saying por el parque, you know, around the park. So this is used a lot with the movement of action. So that's what it's saying. Me gusta escuchar música tranquila o dar un paseo por el parque. Eso ayuda a relajarme. So that, right? This right here, that is expressing all of this here. Okay, so that, because it's this idea. We're not saying specifically that, you know. So it's this idea, all right? All of this here helps, right? Ayudar, this is from the verb ayudar. So this, all here, or that I should say, that, all of that helps to relajarme, to relax me. That's saying there. So next sentence, we have buena idea, right? Good idea, great idea. A mí, okay? A mí, so this is emphasizing to me, right? To me, and I'm guessing this is going to be followed by gustar somewhere. So yes, it is. So this right here, and these two little commas here, if we remove them in this case, this sentence would still make sense, all right? This is just giving us more information about what we're about to say. So, let's go back. So, a mí, cuando estoy preocupado. So you could say, cuando estoy preocupado, a mí me gusta, but this is probably a bit more, you know, native to say it this way. A mí, so to me, cuando estoy preocupado, so when I am worried, me gusta. So don't get thrown off that there's this in the middle, okay? So all we're saying is to me, me gusta escribir mis pensamientos y organizar mis tareas cuando estoy preocupado. Okay? So whenever this person is worried, stressed, worried, a mí, right? So that I'll put myself in this person's shoes. To me, I like, okay, again, me gusta, went over that before, escribir followed by that infinitive form of the verb. I like to write mis pensamientos, so my thoughts, again, this right here needs to agree with thoughts, my, your, his, her, our, mi, mis, tú, tus, su, sus, so on. So my thoughts, and organizar, very similar to English, to organize, mis tareas, my homeworks, right, my works. Again, this agreeing with the noun. with the plurality, not pluralities, plurality, quantity, plurality. There we go. This person responds, ah, qué interesante. Again, we saw at the very top up here. Oh, we saw at the very top. Is that going to allow me? No, it's not going to allow me. That's all good. So we have this accent above the e again. So similar to that como. This is a very common phrase, construct in Spanish. If you want to express the idea of saying how cool, how awesome, how interesting, this is how we do it. We have que followed by whatever it may be. Interesante, genial, right? Que preocupante, okay? So whatever it is that you're saying, how, whatever, it needs to be followed, right? We start with que and then followed by whatever you want to say. I just listed a few off there. Right here we're saying how interesting, right? Interesante. So just que followed by that adjective. Now we have también me siento feliz cuando paso tiempo con mis amigos o mi familia. So also, me siento feliz, again, sentirse, right? That way you're feeling, a certain way you're feeling, feliz followed by the adjective. Cuando, so also I feel happy when I spend time. Cuando, so pasar tiempo. Pasar tiempo means to spend time. Cuando paso tiempo, when I spend time con, right, with mis amigos o mi familia, with my friends or my family. Should be straightforward, a lot of these sentences I'm going over. The response, sí, compartir. So right here, this is a generic expression, which is why we're using the infinitive. So to share, right, moments, to share moments, which is why this isn't conjugated it's why, we don't have comparto, compartes, or comparte, and so on. So compartir, we're basically saying to share moments con seres queridos, with loved ones. So ser is being, right? So technically loved beings, but in English we'd say loved ones, right? Con seres queridos siempre, so always mejora el ánimo. Siempre mejora el ánimo. Always lifts up, right? Betters the mood. Ánimo, estado de ánimo, right? State of mood, state of mind as well. It can be, I know there's a few translations there. Estado de mente, state of mind as well. So to share moments with loved ones, con seres queridos. So a little phrase there you can put down, seres queridos, loved ones. Siempre, always mejora el ánimo. Always betters the mood. Right, the response we have exactamente. Okay, exactamente. Exactly, straightforward there. Y cuando logro terminar todo lo que tengo pendiente. And when, so y, cuando, very straightforward, and when I achieve, so lograr. Lograr has a few meanings, and there's a lot of figurative ones as well. But literally, to achieve is probably the one we'll go for. To achieve, to triumph, you could either do that as well. To achieve, to triumph, to connect as well, you can also do that. But what we're saying here is, and when I achieve, or when I manage, so to manage as well. So lograr plus an infinitive is as follows. I'll write this one down for you guys. So lograr plus infinitive equals to, right? Cuando logro terminar, and when equals to manage to do whatever verb that is. So what we're saying here is when I manage to finish all of the thing which, okay, so todo lo que. So write that one down. This is used a lot. Todo lo que, everything of which. That's probably the best way we can translate it if we're trying to make it make sense in English. So in English, we just say, and when I achieve, or when I manage to finish everything that, but in Spanish, we have to say everything of which that, all right? Very strange. I'll have to make a video on this. When I achieve, or when I manage to finish everything of which that, I have pending, right? Tengo pendiente. So this is from the verb tener, and then pendiente, pending, very similar to English. Here we go. So we have siento mucha satisfacción y alivio. Now this threw me off for a long time in Spanish, and I can't believe it's, a couple of years back was when I finally realized it. But sentir followed by a noun, or an adverb as well, but followed by a noun. This is when you would use sentir by itself instead of using sentirse. That's the best way I can put it. I could say, it's when you feel a feeling, but then me saying, you feel a feeling, it's like, well, surely you're feeling angry. So why would it not just be siento enojado instead of me siento enojado? But the best way I can put it, so you don't make the grammatical mistake, is when it's followed, when you want to follow it by a noun or an adverb, use sentir by itself without the reflexive. When you want to express, I feel angry, I feel happy, I feel worried, and it's followed by an adjective, use sentirse, right? That is the simplest, most simple way I can put it without getting into the whys and the logic behind it. So sentir by itself needs to be followed by, obviously you can say siento que, which means I feel that, but that's, expressing the feeling. Again, me going into depth, don't worry too much. But sentir followed by a noun or an adverb is going to be sentir. Sentirse followed by an adjective, that's just the way they are, okay? So make sure you've got that down. But here we're saying, I feel a lot of satisfaction and relief. So mucha satisfacción. Again, this mucha needs to agree with this noun here, satisfaction being feminine and singular. So mucha and relief. Final little sentence down here, response, me alegro, right? Alegrarse. So very similar to sentirse, it's used with the reflexive and it's one of those verbs around emotion. This right here basically just means I'm happy. And yes, you can simply say estoy feliz, but it's very common in Spanish to use these verbs a lot more than in English, all right? So me alegro, okay? Enamorarse is another one. Abrumarse, alegrarse, so on. So this is just saying, I'm happy, right? Reconocer, again, very similar to this right here. It's this general idea, right? To share something. So we have reconocer, so to recognize our feelings, right? So reconocer, to recognize our feelings. Again, this is going over my, yours, his, hers, our. This needs to agree with the noun in both plurality and gender. So nuestros sentimientos. So to recognize our feelings and to find ways. So encontrar formas. So encontrar just means to find when it's without the reflexive. So encontrar formas. So to find ways of manejarlos. So right here we have manejarlos. This right here is the direct object pronoun, okay? So this right here is just expressing this whole section here, right? Nuestros sentimientos. So we're talking about our feelings. So instead of obviously in English, we would do the exact same. To realize our feelings and find ways of managing them. We're not saying I'm managing our feelings. That's just too much repetition. Spanish does exactly the same, right? So this right here is just saying and managing them, okay? So manejarlos, to manage, to deal with them, es muy importante, is very important. Okay, so hopefully you got all of that down. Leave any comments, any questions down in the comments down below. Make sure you check out my school program as well. That is getting awesome results and we're building an awesome community there. And there are weekly calls with not only me, but all the members as well. But without further ado, we will see each other in the next episode. Nos vemos.